This video was brought to you by Stormberg, a better route planner, MisterGreen, Kempower and Marcus Bil. Yo, what's up? Today I'm going to talk about that rapid gate thing or whatever in the Skoda Enyaq Coupe RS. You know the 1000 kilometer challenge I took recently through Sweden? It was quite hot. It was roughly 25 to 30 degrees Celsius, and I show you in the screen that the car was charging slower than it should. But then how much slower was it? That's what I'm going to show you today. It's actually not that bad. So if you cancel reservation, too bad for you, you jumped the wagon too quick, because it's actually not that bad. Let me show you here. So here we have the charging session. We have the hot weather. That's the one I tested on my way back. And then we had the best case when it was colder. You can see in the bottom there the ambient temperature. And then I also had an earlier test with this. By the way, the middle and the right one is the ID5, same battery. And you will see that at the bottom it charges at 175 kilowatt, all three of them, no problem. And then also you see in the middle of the temperature, the yellow boxes, you see that the car actually wants the battery to heat up slightly during the charging session. And then also you see the AC compressor here. It goes kind of aggressive versus the best case in the middle where it's not that aggressive. But now you will see that eventually, you see, okay, again, still now, even at 30%, it's just neck and neck, no problem. So even now, even when it's hot outside, we have no throttling yet. And also this is a good point, because if you look at the bottom here, the HV content and energy content, we push in over 25 kilowatt hour before things start slowing down. And that's typically the majority of the energy you would not want to push in during the charging session has already been pushed in. And this is when it starts throttling. You see, okay, you'll be like, ah, scheiße. So to the left, we are only taking 86 kilowatt versus 105 kilowatt you would have been taking, right? But bear in mind that we are just staying here for not too long, and for the most cases with Enyaq and also the ID5, they are very efficient. So then you don't have to charge. If you are in a rush, you don't have to charge more than most of the time only to 40%, maybe 50%, like I did during 1000 kilometer challenge, which means that you can already unplug now and then leave, and then the difference is not going to be that big. But I'll also show you what the problem is. If you see on the on the left, I forgot to show you guys. I turn on the HVAC on the very right session, and that actually messes up the charging session a bit, and the battery inlet was going up, and then now it goes down. But what happens now is that because it was semi-hot outside on the right session, the car prioritizes cooling down the cabin, and it splits a little bit. So some cooling power goes to the cabin, and then some goes to the battery. But because of that, the battery temperature went up, and this car doesn't want to have the battery not much hotter than 51 degrees Celsius on the hotter cells. So that's why it starts throttling. So what you want to do, like I did, was to not fire up the cooling until, I guess, well, it depends, but once you are kind of past the critical point, then I guess you can still fire up the cooling, and then you won't be affected that much. But even like I did now, in the most optimal way, it wasn't that big of a problem. One thing I will point out, by the way, is that the AC compressor here that I show you on the left and the middle one, some people debate whether that is true or not. Okay, I actually don't know if it actually pulls 10 kilowatt, because 10 kilowatts sounds like a lot. But however, when I tested recently, when I did some ASMR testing, I saw that during normal drive it was pulling around 500 watt, and that sounds plausible. And also when the car is not overheating the battery and we just drive normally, we use AC, it pulls around 1.5 kilowatt, which also sounds plausible, which means that this variable here, the AC compressor, should be reporting correct numbers. So then why is it reporting 10 kilowatt? Is it really pulling 10 kilowatt? I don't know, but if you look at the middle session right now, when it's pulling 3.5 kilowatt, that is actually quite plausible. And then I also tested this with Model 3 performance. When I enabled track mode, you can see that it was pulling it was actually pulling 5.5 to 6 kilowatt, and that was total. This is the only separated value. But in the Tesla, I was actually looking at the battery power, which includes everything: the screen, the lights, everything that the car pulls, and it was still pulling roughly 5 to 6 kilowatt. So it is plausible that in what you see here, at least 3 kilowatt and 6 kilowatt is possible. And one thing I also notice, point out, is that when you look at the battery inlet here for these sessions, you see that 16 degrees Celsius, and it's roughly 30. yeah, 30 degrees cooler than what the battery pack is at. It was totally different when I tried Tesla, because Tesla would be only around 20 degrees lower than the inlet is roughly 20 degrees lower than the actual battery temperature. So this could indicate that Tesla, okay, it ended now, but it was very interesting. I forgot to show you guys, but they finished roughly at the same time. So the best session finished first, and then the second best session, which was the left one, finished only about 1 minute slower. And then the slowest one, the one when I had AC on for the rest, that was like a little bit more than 1 minute. It was just neck and neck in a charging session that took, I don't remember how much it was, half an hour or something, right? So is that really a big deal? 1 minute extra? No, it's not a big deal. But okay, I was done talking. So what I experienced was that, or I observed was that, for Tesla, it seems like, at least for Tesla Model 3, they have a more efficient cooling. They have cooling loops running on the, you know, when the cells are like this, then they have cooling loops running this. Okay, you can discuss whether that's the best design or what, but at least what I've seen, Model 3 and Model Y, they have a more modern design, and they can cool and heat up the battery way faster, way efficiently, and without having to have too much delta in temperature between inlet versus the actual temperature, right? And also Tesla has something very good, is that the difference between min and max is just 1 degree Celsius, so the whole pack stays quite uniform when it comes to the battery temperature. Whereas what you saw here is that difference between min and max could be roughly 5 degrees Celsius. In the EGMP cars, the Korean cars, Ioniq 5 EV6, it's even worse, because the difference between the coolest and the hottest cell is 12 degrees Celsius, which is actually bad, because the min and the max temperature is dictating a lot of things. When you arrive, and then the min temperature will dictate how fast you can possibly charge. But then as you charge up the Korean cars, we're still talking about the EV6 and Ioniq 5, then the max temperature dictates how much it can take before it overheats. So what you want is to have the delta as small as possible, just like Tesla, because then you arrive with, let's say, like Tesla is doing it, you know, they know they can do it. They can arrive with 50 degrees Celsius, and then you heat it up during the session, but the whole pack stays at the same uniform temperature. But okay, a lot of stuff I can talk about, but yeah, so again, it was such a long discussion about the whole, yeah, but is it really pulling 10 kilowatt? I actually believe it is pulling 10 kilowatt for cooling, because it seems like the MEB cars, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, the MEB car seems to have a somewhat inefficient way of cooling the battery, because from what someone claimed was that they don't use those cylindrical cells, but they use some kind of, I don't know if it was pneumatic or pouch cells, but they cool the battery from beneath only, and then it might be less efficient, and then they have to kind of, you know, cool it a lot, or push a lot of power to cool it, versus Tesla that has a better design for it. Again, these might be some assumptions, but that's the best guess I have based on all the information I gathered. All right, and here, by the way, you see the graph. So let me show you. So the best case, yeah, the blue one here, you're gonna see it. The blue one is the best case, and you see that it is overall the highest one, except for that the HVAC on halfway had a slightly better session. I'm not sure why, but you see the blue one is the optimal. Goes highest pretty much all the way, yes. And then the hot weather, the rapid gate one was here, and you see it actually started. Why don't I have numbers instead of charge here? But okay, so it was throttling slightly here, but not that big of a deal. You see, they were kind of following each other, but then roughly here at roughly 40%, then it takes a dip, and then this happens. But again, if you look at the area here, roughly up until 40%, like I mentioned, most of the time you can actually get away with only 40%, because you kind of need to leap between Ionity chargers anyway, right? Because my point is that even if you charge to, let's say, this point here, you still have to stop at the next Ionity, so you might have to charge it. This is what you've seen over and over again with my 1,000 kilometer challenge. But what I'm saying is that you already get the majority of the, if you look here, this area here, you can imagine that this is the energy amount or something, even though it's not the correct representation. Versus just getting this area here, up here, where you have the rapid gate, and then you can look at the difference, which is I guess this area here, which is like the slower amount, right? So then maybe you start realizing that this area here versus the whole big one here, this big one here, if I can color it, it's quite small. And that's what I was pointing out, that it's just 1 minute difference if you go. And another thing I forgot to point out is that roughly at 65%, it seems like it can recover or something, and then you see that it follows the exact same line as the regular charging session. So it's just this middle section here where it's a little bit hot and it needs to fight the heat. But once it gets higher up here, then the charging power is so low that it doesn't generate that heat, and then it's like the somewhat inefficient cooling in the MEB platform can kind of catch up. It can catch its breath and then it can kind of go cruise the same way up there. So again, this is not that big of a deal. If it was something like Leaf, yeah, when Leaf rapid gates, okay, Leaf will have, just in comparison, Leaf will have, theoretically, it can charge at 100 kilowatt max, the latest and greatest Leaf, but at least practically when we have 200 amp plugs, it can charge at roughly 72 kilowatt, right? So it should be able to charge like here-ish, go like here-ish, right? But when it rapid gates, it's like down here, you know? And that is big facepalm, because instead of taking roughly half an hour charging session, the Leaf, when it rapid gates, it takes 2 hours. That's huge difference. So okay, I show you guys, it looked quite dramatic during the 1000 kilometer challenge, but in reality the problem is really not that big. Okay, it's not optimal, it's not as good as, for example, Tesla or maybe Audi or Porsche or something else, right? But practically most people, they don't feel this, and that's probably why people are not talking about this, because I guess even other car reviewers, EV reviewers, when they test the cars, they don't have the OBD, or they don't pay attention to what's going on, and they also don't notice that the car is actually charging slightly slower. So, but I also believe that this problem here also exists in the eGMP platform, which is the EV6 and Ioniq 5, because I also shown you guys before that it did the rapid gate also, but and even that was also when it was not too hot. So okay, if I'm up for it, just bring it on, lend me the car, EV6 or Ioniq 5, when it's 25 to 30 degrees Celsius. And my prediction is that those cars might also slightly rapid gate, but we might only be talking about losing maybe 5 to 10 minutes during a 1000 kilometer challenge, but they also do rapid gate. That's my claim. So yes, I think that's going to be it for now. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, thank you for watching, and talk to you later.